Hello everyone, I Kuldeep Sharma welcome you all to today's session of Daily News Analysis where we are going to look at the most important news headlines from the today's newspaper. After we are done with the news analysis, we are also going to look at the 20 GK questions for today's newspaper. So let's start with the today's news analysis. The first news from the first page of the Hindu newspaper is regarding an accreditation for the National Human Rights Commission. So let's first understand what is NHRC. So NHRC is your National Human Rights Commission, and it is the main body responsible for protection of human rights. For protection of human rights. For protection of human rights. So NHRC in India is actually a statutory body. It's a statutory body. And what is a statutory body? A statutory body is a body or is an organization created by a statute or by a law. And the specific law by which NHRC has been created is known as Protection of Human Rights Act 1993. So by this particular act, the body of NHRC was created. And let's also look at the composition of this body because it will help us to understand why this has come up in news. So the NHRC consists of one chairman who is usually a chairman or chairperson who is a retired Supreme Court judge or the Chief Justice of India. So usually, as per law actually, the chairman has to be a retired Chief Justice of India or Supreme Court judge. Apart from it, there would be 5 full-time members. 5 full-time members, and one important point which you should note is that out of these 5 full-time members, there should at least be 1 women member. There should be at least 1 women member. One other member is supposed to be a person from the court only, a high court judge, etc. Okay, and apart from it, there are 3 members who are to be appointed by the government who has some experience in human rights cases. So usually the government was appointing retired IAS officers or judicial officers. Now let's look at what this news is about. So there is a particular organization, an international organization known as Ganhari. And the full form of Ganhari is given in your handout also, in this news also, Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institution, and it's an accreditation. It's an accreditation organization. So one question which might come to your mind is, what is accreditation? So accreditation is basically a practice. It's a practice by an organization or a body wherein it accredits or it gives certification. It gives certification that certain standards which have been laid down by this particular organization for this organization are fulfilled by it. That these have been fulfilled by this particular organization, and this particular accreditation is important for NHRC because this accreditation allows NHRC to vote or to have a say in Human Rights Council. So in the UN bodies, Human Rights Council, which is a human rights body, as well as many other UN bodies. So if you have the highest level of accreditation of Ganhari, then only you would have a voting right. You would have a voting right or have a say in the UN bodies which are related to human rights, as well as a Human Rights Council, which is another human rights body. And right now what has happened is that this particular organization has claimed that as of now NHRC is the highest rated accreditation body. So as of now, it is in class A, the highest one. So apart from class A, the other accreditation are B, C, and a suspended member. So these are the 4 categories of the Ganhari accreditation, and NHRC is right now in class A. And there have been, so it is not the first time that this status of NHRC has been in dispute. It was in dispute in 2016 also, in 2011 also. So it was disputed earlier also, and now what has happened is that NHRC has not been able to fulfill the criteria laid down by Ganhari. And in this article, or in this particular topic, you will also find out the reasons also. For example, one reason which they have provided is that presence of police personnel in human rights. So if you go back to the 5 full-time members, so what the government was doing was that out of the 5, 2 to 3 were to be government appointees, and these 2-3 were actually people belonging to IAS, IPS services. And you can understand that these are people who are involved in police services, specifically the IPS officers are involved in police services, and probably a case of human rights violation is actually raised against the police services or your security forces, and if personnel of these services are in the NHRC body, then there is probably a conflict of interest. And what is conflict of interest? So conflict of interest is that the interest of the person who has come up to the court and the person who is actually judging, there is a conflict of interest. Probably this IPS officer or this security personnel who is actually is a member of NHRC has to decide against one of the officers belonging to their same services. So that's why it might be leading to conflict of interest. Apart from it, the second reason why what they have provided is that there is lack of gender representation. There is lack of gender representation. So as I've told you that the chairman is supposed to be a retired Supreme Court judge or a Chief Justice of India, and it was recently changed. It was only recently changed in 2013 to accommodate other Supreme Court judge also, because earlier it was only the Chief Justice of India who could have become the chairman of the NHRC also. And what was happening was, because none of the women judge has ever been the Chief Justice of India, which means it was practically not possible for a woman to become the chairperson of the NHRC. So because of this, it also was flagged that there is no proper gender representation, as well as no representation from the minority also. So religious minority, etc., are also not getting any representation in this particular body. So these were some of the reasons why the accreditation status of NHRC has been in use, and that's why it has come up. So right now, the present chairperson of NHRC, and I hope you know who is the present chairperson of NHRC, because it's one of the question also in our 20 GK questions for today. So if you already know the answer, I expect you to write the name of the present chairperson of NHRC in the comment box of it. So now he has gone to the Geneva where its headquarters is located, and therein they are arguing ki how India still deserves a class A status. Okay, so this is the first news from the Hindu newspaper. Moving on to the next important news for today. So I straight away moved to the editorial section. So in the editorial section, there is a particular editorial regarding one of a new report of RBI. So RBI has come up with a new report, and it's a very good report. So herein he is talking about the Monetary Policy Committee. So let's understand what is Monetary Policy Committee. So if you know, the economic policy of a country has two components. One is the fiscal policy, which is related to the revenues and expenditure of the government, and the other is monetary policy related to the interest rate of the RBI, so our interest rates in the government. And this monetary policy is usually not just in India but all over is regulated by the central banks of those countries. By the central banks of those countries, and in India it is RBI. So before 2016, it was actually only the governor of the RBI or the RBI governor who used to decide what should be the monetary policy of India should be, or what should be the repo rate, reverse repo rate. So all of these we are going to study in our economics session. However, since 2016, the job which was only of the governor has now been given to a new committee known as Monetary Policy Committee, which is a 6-member body. It's a 6-member body, of which 3 are from RBI and 3 are government nominees. And now these 6 people are going to decide what should be the interest rate should be. what should be the interest rate of the RBI on which RBI is going to give funds to the banks. And the main objective or the main role of this MPC is to control the inflation. So it is to control the inflation at 4%. So if you would have been reading the newspaper, you would have found out that right now it is somewhere in the ballpark of 5.8 to 6%, although it was recently as 5.1%. So it's still higher than the inflation, which is the target of MPC, and a band of 2 to 6% has been given to it. So what this article is about, that this particular report has advised that the monetary policy committee, while deciding on the monetary policy or the interest rate, should also take care or also should look into the environmental consequences of climate change. And here it is also talking about neutral or natural interest rate. So what is this new natural interest rate? So let's say everything is being normal, everything is normal in the economy. Everything is normal in the economy, and it would be this rate, this neutral or natural interest rate would be that interest rate on which the economy of India would be growing at the highest pace. So the GDP would be at the possible, or GDP growth rate would be the highest in other terms. So what is natural or neutral interest rate? It is that interest rate in which the GDP growth rate would be maximum. So whatever would be the maximum GDP rate, we would be getting at a neutral or natural interest rate. And this committee has suggested that we should develop a new model to calculate it. We should develop a new model to calculate the neutral interest rate. We should develop a new model to calculate the neutral interest rate, and I'm just giving you explaining this thing. They have used the term a Keynesian model. So Keynes, from the name Keynes comes the Keynesian model. So he was an economist, and he believed that in a stable economy, or to stabilize the economy, government role is important. So you might find this term Keynesian economics or Keynesian model in a particular article when it's come to critical reasoning or your English section. So there also these kinds of terms you can find if a economics based question comes up. So Keynes was an economist who believes that if there is a government, the government can play a role in stabilizing the economy. So it is not just the stability of an economy is not just dependent on the market forces, but also on the government also. So what this report has suggested is that to calculate the neutral natural interest rate, we need to build a new model which should be a Keynesian model, and therein impacts of climate change should be incorporated to calculate this neutral interest rate. Basically, let's say if the climate change impact is going to be high, then there should be a decrease in the neutral interest rate, and as well as if there is a decrease, or if climate change would not have any impact, then it should be a lower rate. So that's what this article is suggesting, or it's giving its opinion that how we should also calculate the natural interest rate, and what are the possible reasons why we have to give this change also. Moving on to the next news. So next is again an article or editorial from the Hindu newspaper only, and it is right now, it's like of a summary. It's kind of a summary, I'll tell you. It's a summary of the current war, of the current Israel-Iran crisis. So it's only a summary. There is nothing very relevant with regard to GK here. However, because we have already covered it, so you won't be finding any GK related data from here. However, if you have not gone through, or if you want to get a summary of what has happened till now in this Iran-Israel crisis, then this would be a good read. For example, herein he has given a certain context regarding how much Israel or how much the leaders of Israel hate Iran. They hate Iran, and they have here he has given us some amount of historical context, not the total history of it, but the recent 10-12 years, the last 10-12 years, how it has happened in the Israel, Iran and US conflict. Therein now he is talking about how the US government has responded. How the US government has responded since October 7 attack. So I hope you remember this date. October 7 of 2023 is the date on which Hamas actually attacked Israel. And in the initial phase, not just the US but all the countries of the world, including India and even the Islamic nations, were in favor of Israel. Why? Because the attack on October 7 was considered a terrorist attack. However, because of the response, because of the unequal response by Israel, many countries, including its biggest ally US, has come in support, or has now been withdrawing support from Israel. It has been warning Israel that it should not take any effect. Then herein he has started to talk about the current situation, which is basically what had happened between Iran and Israel. So if you may know that Israel was actually attacking different parts of Iran and different parts of Iran control or Iran related security forces in Syria. And one such attack took place on April 1st. And therein one of the leaders or security, high-grade leader, military leader of Iran died in that attack. And therein Iran felt that it has come the time, it is the time now to do retaliatory strikes. So because of this Israel strike on Iran in Syria, Iran for the first time decided to attack Israel. Iran for the first time. So this fact is important. Then before this it has never been the case that Iran has actually attacked the territory of Israel. So one of the terms which you will find in this handout, in this particular article, is also shadow war. So it's a very self-explanatory term. What is a shadow war? So basically you are not fighting in the open, you are actually fighting in a shadow. So what happens in a shadow war is that basically the major powers, like for example, if I take example of Cold War, so it was not the US or USSR which were fighting directly, but there were theaters in a third country. Like for example Afghanistan. So earlier USSR actually had occupied Afghanistan, and it was the US who had created Taliban to fight against USSR dominance there. Same was the case in Vietnam also. The same was the case with the Korea also. For Korea it would be US and China actually. Okay, so these are an example of shadow war. So actually the great powers are actually not in direct conflict, but they are supporting one or the other side to beat the second side, to beat this side in that war against them. So this is an example. So once here the Iran finally responded against Israel by attacking the territory of Israel, and after this Iran actually went ahead and actually attacked Israel. So once this was done, then this is concluded. Herein this particular author is stating that of all the issues which have taken place in this Israel-Iran war, it is basically the Iran which has come out as a winner. So although Israel has been doing a shadow war with Iran for last 20-30 years, in the recent time, and because of this recent attack, it is the country of Iran which has come at the top because of the failure of Israel, to respond properly, because it was not getting any kind of support from US, etc. So it's a kind of a summary of the Israel-Iran conflict which is going on right now. So if you haven't gone through it, you should go through this article, so you will get a good feedback or a good summary of what is happening there. So moving on to the next one. So from the text and context section of the Hindu newspaper, it is talking about aircraft carrier. So what is an aircraft carrier? So as the name suggests, it's a ship, it's a naval ship. It's a naval ship which can carry aircrafts and also help them to operate. So aircraft can land on these ships, can take a flight from this ship, and can help the navy to get dominance in blue water. So there is this particular term known as blue water navy, and if a country has aircraft carrier which has it also controls the air in the naval area or in the water area, then it is considered as a blue water navy. So aircraft carrier becomes important. So let's look at the history of the aircraft carriers in India. So India has been having one or the other aircraft carrier since the 1960s. So in the 1960s, we actually took two aircraft carriers from the UK. One was named INS Vikrant. So don't get confused. It's the old INS Vikrant. The new one is also named INS Vikrant, and the second was INS Virat. So these were the two aircraft carrier which India actually took from US. So these were not new, but they were refurbished aircraft carriers which we have taken from the country of United Kingdom. And both of these have now been decommissioned, which means they are no longer in service. Both of these are decommissioned now. Then after this, we actually took an aircraft carrier from Russia known as INS Vikramaditya. However, as you can see, all of the three aircraft carriers, two from the UK, one from the Russia, are actually acquired from a foreign country. Which means we are falling behind in our goal of aircraft carrier. Yeah, in our goal of defense procurement or defense production. That's why now India has started an indigenous aircraft carrier plan, and under this we have actually created our first indigenous aircraft carrier, which is also known as INS Vikrant. So it is actually right now functional. It is actually in service right now. INS Vikrant. It is an indigenously created aircraft carrier, and now India is deciding to create the second of its series. So why this has come up in news? Apart from it, there is the another one which is functional right now. So the one which we have occupied or which we have taken from the Russian forces is INS Vikramaditya. So these are the two present aircraft carriers being functioned by India or being used by India to control the Indian Ocean region. So apart from India, there are many other countries which have aircraft carriers, and you should know it is the country of USA which has 11 aircraft carrier and is a leader in aircraft carriers. At the second place would be Russia with 4 to 5, I think 4 or 5 depending on how many population, and China right now has 3. So you can understand the dominance which USA has in navy or naval power. So look at the amount of difference which is there between the first and the second and the third one. Because of this, US is very powerful when it's come to naval power in the ocean. Okay, so this article talks about various facts about Vikrant, INS Vikrant, how we have developed, why it is required, etc. So again, you can read it. The information which I given you here is actually not part of this handout, so you can write down this information. However, this is only for reading purposes. Moving on to the next news. So one news which has come up recently in the Hindu newspaper only is that India's Chinese import bill is up 2.3 times in 15 years. So India has been importing more. So imports from China is rising the fastest. But exports from India to China are stable. They are same for the last 15 years. It has not increased very much. However, India's dependence on China has increased. So it gives us an opportunity to understand who are India's biggest trade partner. Which means if I add my exports plus my imports, which country would come on top? And surprise or surprise, it's not China as of now, it is the USA. So in terms of total trade, it is USA. And again, it is still not China, it is the country of UAE. And third is actually China. So if I look at the total trade between two countries with respect to India, it is the US exports plus import which is the highest. So which means USA is the largest trading partner of India. Second, third is not required, but first is important. Now let's look at the India's export. So where does India exports to the most? So again, it would be the USA. And it has a trade surplus. Trade surplus basically that our exports exceeds our imports to USA. Second is again UAE. And third is China. So India exports maximum to the US, and second is UAE, and third is China. Okay, remember this. And third point, India's import. So where does India import from? So here it would be China, because we are dependent a lot on China. Okay, it's China, imports from China. Second is UAE, and third would be Netherlands. Just remember these two. So India's imports the maximum from China, and the second is UAE. As you can see, India exports a lot to UAE as well as imports a lot from UAE. It is because we do not have direct trade relation with Pakistan. So both the exporters from India and from Pakistan, they set up a subsidiary in UAE and actually drew their trade through UAE. So it is one of the reason. It is not just the main reason for why we have a good trade relation with UAE. So apart from the it being a transit port also. So if any kind of transit used to happen to Pakistan or a third country, it is to be done through UAE. So that is one reason. And the other reason is because we do not have direct trade relation with Pakistan. It is through the channel of UAE we do a lot of trade. And this news is important because now, because of this import bill, so actually the import bill is 101 billion. Not the total trade, but only the import part is actually 101 billion, which is a lot when we compare that our exports are very low. Our exports are very low and it has not been rising with respect to China. Here is a list of the products or of the commodities in which there is a maximum amount of import. So I won't recommend that you understand all the five. You just know that in terms of electronics, 44% of imports of electronics are from the state of China. So 44% of imports of electronics are actually happening through China. So just have a read of this also. Moving on. So another important news from the Indian Express. So although it has been covered earlier also, so earlier it was reported that Hong Kong and Singapore has banned MDH and Everest spices because of presence of ethylene oxide, which is a pesticide and it's only used as a fumigant. Fumigant is a chemical used to make that particular product or save that particular product from bacterial or fungal infection. So, but it should not be in the consumable quantity. So, because of the presence of ethylene oxide as well as presence of pesticides and other kinds of bacteria. And now a new report has come up wherein it has been reported that US has actually rejected 1/3 of MDH exports since October over Salmonella. So you should just understand what is Salmonella is. Salmonella, it is actually a bacteria. It's a bacteria and it actually causes severe stomach infection. Severe stomach infection, basically targeting your intestines. It targets the intestines. Okay, so in this news, only this one is important for GK purposes. What is Salmonella? And it's a bacteria, and what does it do? So it basically causes severe stomach infection. So it should not be there in your food. Should not be there in your food. And usually these kind of bacteria are found because of unhygienic processes. So it is because of unhygienic processes in the production system. Because of this, bacteria enters the food chain. So it should not have been there. So another important news from the explained section of Indian Express. So I've already told you, I've repeated again and again that the explained section in the Indian Express is a really good section, and I expect you all to at least read all the topics mentioned in it. So today one very good topic has come up in the explain section if you are reading your Indian Express, which is there is a talk regarding a global treaty on plastic waste. So remember this, as of now there is no treaty. So I'm only considering, or I'm teaching this topic for only those part of this topic which is important for GK. So as of now, there is no treaty on plastic waste, and currently there are talks going on in Ottawa, Canada. Ottawa in Canada, there are talks going on regarding creating of global treaty on plastic waste, wherein we are going to possibly ban, total ban on single-use plastic. And one thing which you should notice, in this particular meeting in Ottawa, Canada, actually India is also part of it. India is also part of it. And one of the focus area of this, that they want to completely ban. One of the proposal of this treaty would be completely ban on plastic by 2040. So by 2040, they want to do complete ban on the plastic. I hope you are already aware that India has already banned use of single-use plastic. So basically, which we call as disposables. So plastic disposables are now banned in India. So let's see how this particular negotiation turns up. Okay, so these are the important news from the today's Indian Express as well as the Hindu news. So now it's time to do the 20 GK question. So again, all of these questions have been taken from the Hindu and the Indian Express newspaper only. So I hope you are able to attempt all of these. So let's look at the answer for these questions. So first question is a very easy question. So who is the present chairperson of NHRC? So it is Arun Kumar Mishra, who is a retired Supreme Court judge. And these are the former presidents or former chairperson of NHRC. You don't have to remember this name, but you should know this name because he was the first chairperson. He was the first chairperson of NHRC. Moving on. So Ganhari will review membership of status of NHRC India this year. What is the current status of India as per Ganhari accreditation? So it is class A. We have also discussed it in today's class that right now India has the highest accreditation and it is being reviewed right now. Next. So important question related to elections. So as a general citizen also, once you are above 18, you should also know, when you are exercising your voting right, what is the security deposit if a person wants to contest the Lok Sabha polls. So is it 500 rupees? Is it 12,500? Is it 25,000 or is it 50,000? And the answer is 25,000. So if a person wants to contest the Lok Sabha election, he has to do a security deposit of 25,000. And if he receives the minimum limit, there is a particular limit. If you do not receive that much votes, then this is actually taken up by the election commission. So 12,500 is actually for SCs and STs. So if they want to contest, there is a rebate of 50%, and rupees 500 was actually the earlier limit. Earlier security deposit was 500, it was changed in 60s, 70s. So right now you should remember it is 25,000. Now since I've asked you the Lok Sabha security deposit, I've also asked you the deposit for assembly constituency. Is it 5,000, 10,000, 20 or 25,000? And the answer here is 10,000 rupees. So if you are fighting a assembly constituency, so what are assemblies? Basically for legislative assembly of the state. Legislative assembly of state. जो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के इलेक्शंस होते हैं उसके लिए. So it is basically 10,000 and 5,000 for SCs and STs. So very easy to remember. It is half for what the fees for SC and ST or security deposit for SC ST candidate is actually half of what it is for a general candidate. Moving on. So according to this Representation of People Act, which is the law which regulates elections in India, what is the maximum number of constituencies from which one candidate can contest in India? So let's say if a particular person wants to fight Lok Sabha election, he can file his nominations from how many constituency? So which means, for example, if you remember in 2014, Prime Minister Modi actually fought from two constituencies, one from Gujarat and one from UP. So one from UP and Gujarat. And if you know the name of the constituency in Gujarat, so I am telling you the constituency in UP, it is Varanasi, from which he is presently the MP also. Tell me the name of the Gujarat constituency from which Prime Minister Modi actually fought his elections. Okay, so in 2014, Prime Minister Modi actually fought from 2 seats, not just one, from 2. So earlier there was no limit on the number of seats from which a contestant could fight. However, again in 1990s, there was a limit put up on the number of constituencies from which a particular person can fight his Lok Sabha election. And as per the Representation of People Act, it is now 2. So a person can simultaneously fight for 2 Lok Sabha constituencies. So which of the following is India's first indigenous aircraft carrier? And now we know it is INS Vikrant. We have already discussed it in today's news analysis. Moving on, with which of the following countries India's import has crossed 100 billion mark in 2023-24? So also remember which of the following countries for the first time. So with no other country our import has been to this extent, and actually it is the country of China. So who is the president of state of Palestine? So Israel-Palestine issue is going on. So you should know the president of the state of Palestine. It is Mahmoud Abbas. Moving on. In the context of recent attack in the Red Sea, which country's rebels are commonly known as Houthis? So Houthis is actually a tribal group in this particular country who's actually have been attacking the assets of Israel or ships related to Israel or Western allies, and it is in Yemen. Dubai is planning to build world's largest airport, as it was reported in today's newspaper. Which is the current largest airport of the world? So currently, once this Dubai airport will be built, it would become the largest airport. But which aircraft, which airport recently or right now is the largest airport? So actually, it is actually King Fahd International Airport, Saudi Arabia, which is the largest airport of the world. And then the airport which is being developed in Dubai is actually Al Maktoum International Airport. Denver is the second one, and it is the fourth one. Moving on, where did historical floods occur on April 17? Possibly due to anticyclonic circulation. So you may know that on April 17th was widely reported Dubai, which usually does not get any kind of rain, very low rainfall, actually was flooded because of unexpected rain. And one of the reason given was possible reason was anticyclonic circulation, which is basically a region of high pressure. Moving on, IRDAI deals with which of the following? So if you know the full form of IRDAI, you would know that it is actually related to insurance. So what is the full form of IRDAI? It is Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India, which actually regulates the insurance sector in India. Moving on, the option of nota in the polling system has been in use from which year? So I hope you know the full form of nota. If you know the full form of nota, then please mention it in the comment box. What is the full form of nota? And the question is basically from which year it was begin to be incorporated into the EVM system, and the answer would be 2013. So since 2013, nota as an option has been provided in the EVMs now. Naima Khatun was recently appointed as the Vice Chancellor of which university? So it was in news a lot because currently it is the Jamia University, JNU and AMU. These three central universities are actually having a women Vice Chancellor for the first time. Women Vice Chancellors for the first time. And it is actually the State University of AMU or Aligarh Muslim University, of which Naima Khatun has become the first woman Vice Chancellor. Moving on, which of the following country is the largest military spender in the world? Is it India? Is it US? Is it China? Is it Russia? So read the question properly. I'm asking which of the country is largest military spender, not the importer. Because if it would have been largest military importer, the answer would have been different. So I'm asking which is the largest military spender. For example, which country is doing the maximum R&D and is into production also. And it can also be exporting also. So in terms of military spending, it is actually the state of United States, or it is the country of United States, which is the largest military spender. And if the question would have been who is the largest importer, it would have been India. So first is US, second in terms of military spending is China, third is Russia, and actually fourth is India. Moving on, India is celebrating 50th year of the launch of India's first satellite known as. So what was the name of India's first satellite of which we have just celebrated 50th year, which means it is very important. So it is the Aryabhat satellite. Moving on, what does Sagar stand in the context of Indian Navy? So Sagar is actually a security doctrine or a naval security doctrine adopted by India. So what is the full form of SAGAR? So actually the full form of SAGAR is security and growth for all in the region. So it is on this particular doctrine through which we actually, it is this doctrine which India follows when it comes to its control of Indian Ocean, or its role of as a security provider in the Indian Ocean. So it means that India is not only responsible for its own security and growth, but for all in the region. Moving on, in which country has the new gold-backed currency called GZ has been launched? And the answer here is Zimbabwe. So Zimbabwe has launched a new gold-backed currency called ZIZ. Next, so last two questions from the sports section. Which of the following won the gold for the first time in Archery World Cup recurve tournament? So right now Archery World Cup is going on, and which of the following country has won the gold for the first time in the recurve tournament? Is it South Korea, China, India, or Vietnam? So it is actually India. So a good news for India, because it has won a gold medal in the team category in the Archery World Cup recurve. And earlier it was always South Korea, which are actually Asian champions also. So these are Asian champions also. However, India for the first time has won a gold here. And the last question for today, the Thomas Cup and the Uber Cup are tournaments related to which sports? So Uber Cup and Thomas Cup are very famous tournaments which happens biennially. Are tournaments related to which sports? Is it to badminton? Is it related to squash? Is it a tennis related sports, or is it a table tennis related sports? And the answer for 20th would be A, badminton. So Thomas Cup, which is a men's tournament, and Uber Cup, which is a women's tournament and happens simultaneously, are actually related to badminton. Okay, so these are the 20 GK questions for today. So class, that's it from my side. I hope to see you in the next class with the new news headlines for tomorrow's newspaper, as well as the new 20 GK questions to increase your question bank. So thank you and have a very nice day from my side.